Are you ready to learn about one of the most heinous Nazi officers in history? Oskar Dirlewanger led a combat unit that consisted of rapists, murderers, and psychopaths who committed unspeakable atrocities in Poland and Belarus during World War II. But did you know that before Dirlewanger's unit was formed, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS for the Reich, was consulted? And that this unit was enlisted to fight partisans in mountainous areas? In this video, we'll explore the life of Oskar Dirlewanger and the horrific crimes committed by his unit. From sexual assault to the torture and murder of innocent civilians, the atrocities committed by the Dirlewanger Brigade will shock and horrify you. Stay tuned until the end to learn more about this dark chapter in history. Before Adolf Hitler gave his approval for the formation of a special combat unit that consisted of only prisoners serving time for poaching and related offenses, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS for the Reich, was consulted. This was done before Hitler gave his approval. This combat unit is enlisted to fight partisans in mountainous areas, so keep that in mind. This unit will soon be comprised of the most heinous rapists, psychopaths, sexual freaks, and murderers who will terrorize the populace and carry out unspeakable atrocities, primarily in Poland and Belarus. Oskar Dirlewanger, one of the most heinous criminals associated with the Nazi regime, eventually becomes its leader. On September 26, 1895, Oskar Dirlewanger was born. His father was successful in business. Following the outbreak of World War I, Dirlewanger took part in the German invasion of Belgium and later served in the military in France. In November of 1918, when Germany capitulated into the Allies, he was a lieutenant and sustained 6 wounds during the war. He was also awarded the Iron Cross in both the second and first classes. Dirlewanger developed a bitter personality as a result of his experiences on the front lines. Following the conclusion of World War I, Oskar Dirlewanger was labeled as an alcoholic who also suffered from mental instability. Those who possessed those personality traits were considered prime candidates for membership in the Nazi Party and SA, both of which Oskar Dirlewanger joined in 1923. Following the completion of his studies at the Goethe University in Frankfurt in 1921, he was awarded a doctorate in political science from that institution the following year, in 1922. In addition to this, Oskar Dirlewanger was both a pedophile and a rapist. In 1934, he sexually assaulted a member of the League of German Girls who was only 13 years old. The League of German Girls was the female branch of the Hitler Youth. Additionally, it was determined that he was responsible for causing damage while operating a government vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. As a direct consequence of this, his doctorate was revoked, and he was kicked out of the SA and the Nazi Party, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. After being released from prison, he served in the Condor Legion, a German military unit that was stationed in Spain during the Spanish Civil War to provide support for General Franco's nationalist movement. He was there from 1936 until 1939. The Third Reich of Nazi Germany made the most of the opportunity to train for and hone the strategic bombing techniques that would soon be used in the Second World War by taking advantage of it. After receiving 3 wounds, Dirlewanger was granted permission to rejoin the Nazi Party and regain his doctorate. These privileges had been revoked from him after he was found guilty of raping a girl who was 13 years old. In July of the same year, 1939, Dirlewanger enlisted in the SS, which coincided with the official beginning of World War II on September 1st. Poachers who already had a criminal record made up the bulk of the initial membership of the Dirlewanger Brigade when he first established and trained it as a specialized criminal organization. Because of their skills in tracking and shooting, they were recruited to fight against partisans. In later years, the majority of the convicted criminals that his unit employed were German nationalists. His unit was initially sent to Nazi-occupied Poland, where Dirlewanger rose through the ranks to become the commandant of the Stary Dzikov camp. This camp was designed to house Jewish slave laborers and was established during World War II. They were responsible for criminal activity not only in this ghetto but also the one in Lublin. It was common practice to strip the young Jewish female prisoners naked before administering strychnine injections and then whipping them. They were laughing as the unfortunate victims passed away in front of them from convulsions, but they did not seem to care. There were even rumors that they would boil horse meat with chopped up Jewish women to make soup. Gottlob Berger, a patron and friend of Dirlewanger, as well as Heinrich Himmler, were both aware of these crimes and approved of them. They needed more men like Dirlewanger if they wanted to win the battle against the non-Aryan subhumans. In February of 1942, the Dirlewanger Brigade was sent to Belarus, where they committed atrocities including the raping and torturing of young women and the murder of at least 30,000 innocent civilians. Their signature tactic consisted of herding the inhabitants of the area into a barn and then setting fire to the structure. Anyone who tried to escape the burning bar was met with fire from a machine gun that was trained on them. The Dirlewanger unit, much like the Einsatzgruppen, which were the Nazi death squads operating behind the lines in Nazi-occupied Eastern Europe, forced their victims, who were frequently naked, to kneel down on the edge of a mass grave before shooting them in the back of the neck with automatic weapons. This was done before the victims were thrown into the mass grave. After that, the bodies dove headfirst into the crater. On August 1st, 1944, the Warsaw Uprising began, and Dirlewanger and his men took part in its repression while committing heinous crimes. Additionally, they committed these atrocities during the uprising. They also took part in the Wola massacre, which occurred during the uprising and resulted in the deaths of more than 40,000 Polish people who lived in the Wola district of the Polish capital. Adolf Hitler personally issued the command to massacre anything that moves in order to put an end to the Warsaw Uprising. The Dirlewanger Brigade set fire to 3 hospitals while patients were still present in each of them. Following their abuse at the hands of multiple sexual partners and physical punishment, the nurses were also subjected to being hung naked along with the doctors. Even when dealing with children, he displayed no pity or compassion. When they found a daycare, Dirlewanger gave his men orders to kill all 500 of the children they found inside the building. Because he ordered his soldiers to save ammunition, those responsible for the slaughter of the defenseless children used bayonets and the butts of their rifles. In the old town of Warsaw, thousands of innocent civilians and prisoners of war were brutally murdered and raped, regardless of their gender or age. Many of them were injured by gunfire, and others were burned by flamethrowers. The Warsaw Uprising began on March 17th and lasted for 63 days before it was put down on October 2nd, 1944. Despite being in the suburbs of Warsaw, the Red Army did not help the Polish resistance fighters. It is believed that one of the primary reasons Stalin decided not to support the uprising was that he wanted to establish a pro-Soviet communist regime in Poland, and a successful uprising by the rebels could threaten his plans. The fact that the rebels supported the democratic Polish government in exile in London is thought to be one of the main reasons for this. It is estimated that more than 150,000 innocent civilians lost their lives as a direct result of the Warsaw Uprising. In recognition of the contributions he made towards the suppression of the uprising, Oskar Dirlewanger was awarded a promotion and the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. In October 1944, Dirlewanger and his men played a significant role in making it possible for the brutal suppression of the Slovak National Uprising, which had been going on since August 29th and lasted until October 28th of that year. After that, they fought against the oncoming Red Army in Germany and Hungary during the later stages of the war. After the war ended in 1945, on June 1st, Oskar Dirlewanger was taken into custody. Despite the fact that he was trying to conceal his identity and was dressed in civilian garb, a Jewish ex-inmate of a concentration camp recognized him and ordered that he be taken to a holding facility. The passing of Dirlewanger occurred on June 7, 1945. The medical examiner ruled that he passed away from a heart attack. However, the truth is that after former Polish prisoners recognized him, they beat him to death as retaliation for his brutality in quelling the Warsaw Uprising. They did this because he was responsible for the deaths of many Polish prisoners. For Oskar Dirlewanger, no tears were shed. As we come to the end of this video, it's hard to comprehend the level of depravity that Oskar Dirlewanger and his men were capable of. The atrocities committed by the Dirlewanger Brigade are a reminder of the horrors that humanity is capable of. It's important to never forget these events and to continue to educate ourselves and future generations about the atrocities committed during the Nazi regime. We must remember the innocent lives lost and the suffering endured by those who were victimized by Dirlewanger and his men. It is up to us to ensure that history does not repeat itself and that we work towards creating a better future for all. If you found this video informative, please consider sharing it with others and subscribing to our channel for more thought-provoking content.